Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Return Missionary Next Chapters podcast. I'm your host, Sid Bassett. Today, we're joined by Chloe Evans. Chloe's mission journey is a masterclass in flexibility and finding joy in the unexpected. After starting her teaching mission in Gilbert, Arizona, health challenges led her back to her roots near her home, where she was reassigned to a service mission that changed her life. From working at the PCC farm and Temple Laundry to now studying public health at Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah, and launching a nonprofit for disability care, Chloe's story isn't just about where she served, but how she allowed the Lord to direct and redirect her path time and time again. This is a story of faith, new beginnings, and trusting in the Lord with all your heart. Chloe, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm super excited to be here.
Well, we're going to start before your mission. And I think maybe within a year, you moved from Hawaii, England, Washington State. I don't know which order that was, but that's quite a lot of moves in a short period of time. Just curious, how did those moves prepare you for a mission? Or was it always going to be thus that you were born for change?
That's a good question. So that year was really interesting. I grew up in Hawaii until I was about 11. My parents got married. They stayed there for a long time, and I got to grow up there. It was awesome. But my dad was an assistant basketball coach at the school, and they got rid of sports. So we had to find somewhere new to go. And he got offered kind of a once-in-a-lifetime job playing pro basketball in England and helping coach for one of the teams there in Plymouth. So my parents decided, yeah, we're just going to do it. So they said yes, and we were going to move to England, right? But we had to wait for our visas. So we were in California for about a summer. Yeah, because we left at the end of the school year from Hawaii, and we lived in California over the summer waiting for our visas. And then we got to England. We lived there for about 4 months, and then my dad ended up getting hurt. So we had to come back to the States because, playing basketball. We moved to Washington State for about 6 months, and then we got to Utah. We were in Utah for like 8 years, I think. So lots of change. But your question was how that kind of helped prepare me. I've moved probably 25 or 30 times, lots of times, yeah. And I feel like every time you move, you learn something new. And every time you move, you realize it's either a good move or a bad move. And I've only had like probably 1 or 2 moves I didn't love. The rest, I feel like I was able to find some good. But I feel like being able to move that many times really helped me understand that, like, if something wasn't going my way, that was okay, because it was probably going to be able to change. Like, it wasn't that way forever. Or that if there was something good, maybe the same. Maybe it wasn't going to stay forever, so I needed to kind of savor the moment and enjoy the good while I had it. I don't know if that makes sense, but I feel like that's kind of what I learned.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And what a great attitude. The fact of the matter is you do have to choose that attitude. There are many who do move that don't find the same perspective in their life. And, it is nice to sort of cut ties with the bad, but there was also good there you cut ties with to some degree. So you have to move on and start over again in a lot of sense. So that's a really great attitude that you carry with you. I'm curious, over all those years, going off topic a little bit, after all these years, though, do you keep friends from all those locations? I mean, maybe social media has been helpful to keep up with people, but how did you keep relationships so that you could keep roots with your friendships?
I probably have 2 really good friends that I've been friends with for over 10 years. One of the friends also moved like a lot because her dad was in the military, and we overlapped in middle school. We're still really good friends because she kind of understands. She actually lives in Florida right now. And then the other good friend that I've still kept in contact with was actually one of my dad's assistant coaches. He played for my dad at UIUH, and he like lived with us for a few years. So he's like individually best friends with like every human in my family. It's awesome. We all love him. But yeah, I feel like the rest of the friends I have been from more recent years, like from my college experience, because it is really hard to keep in contact unless like both people understand that you have to like do the long distance. And that's pretty hard to do unless you're like really willing to do it.
Yeah, it really is hard. So when people ask you, where are you from? What do you say?
I hate that question. Most of the time I say Hawaii because my family did move back to Hawaii. So I grew up there, and then they moved back. So most of the time I say Hawaii, but then if people like ask me questions, I'll usually tell them like Hawaii and then Utah for a while and then Hawaii again.
That certainly has some cachet to it. I mean, saying that you grew up in Hawaii, that sounds like the answer I would always like to give.
Yeah.
Okay, so now let's just get closer to your mission. You served in Arizona. Did you always want to serve a mission?
That's actually an interesting question. So I was thinking about it and I didn't think I did, but then I had looked back through my journals from when I was like in ninth grade and I found myself writing about a mission. So apparently I did. I just didn't realize I had written it down. I guess it was a good thing I did. Yeah, I don't know. I felt like it was a good idea. So I just kind of planned on it.
Well, I wouldn't say you're the prototypical missionary because of your journey you had, but you were a sensational, extraordinary missionary. I know that for personal experience. So it sounds like your younger you knew better as you got older, that you knew that was something you needed to do. So you went on your mission, and why don't you tell your story about how things went with your illness and how that kind of developed over time? I would love to hear that story.
Would it be okay if I started with how I got out on my mission?
Please do. Absolutely.
I think it's kind of my story is very strange. But so
No, I'll just rephrase that. It's uniquely yours. It's
it's
your
very uniquely
story. It's
mine.
your journey. And I love that because each of us can learn from each other's stories because we don't share the same story, actually.
No, you're right, you're right. So, I went to Brigham Young University in Provo for a year before my mission, and after by the time it became summer, I was kinda stuck. I was trying to find a job, I was living at home, I didn't know what to do with myself, and nothing was kinda working out, but then we had a family friend who lives up in Washington in Tri-Cities and was like, "You should just go work for your uncle up there," because 'cause they're just a family friend, and I was like, "Oh, that's a good idea." So I called my uncle and I was like, "Do you need a receptionist this summer?" Because he's a chiropractor. He was like, "Yeah, move up here." So, 2 days later, I, packed up all my stuff and I drove to Washington, and I just, lived there for the summer before my mission. It was awesome. It was really neat because I had one cousin who was doing his papers and then another cousin who was planning on doing a mission. So it was really cool because we were all kind of in the same stage of life. While I was up there, I was working and saving money and just spending time with them, and it was really fun. One day I was sitting on my bed and I was reading my scriptures, and then I was like, I feel like I should pray. And I was talking to God and I was like, hey, when do you want me to go on a mission? And the answer I got was a very stark right now. I stopped and I was like, are you serious right now? I looked up. I was like, right now? Are you serious? And he's like, yeah, right now. So I called my parents and I was like, hey, I need to start my papers. And they were like, okay. So I started my papers, and by December of that year, I got my call. Or no, sorry, by I think September, I got my call. And then I started my mission in December, which was pretty cool. Kind of strange, but it was really fun that
That's quick.
yeah, it was really cool that I, had that experience because I was kinda able to I really feel like living on well, technically on my own, not really, I was with my aunt and uncle, but, living on my own, kind of, really helped prepare me for my mission, and being with other people who were preparing for a mission was really, really good for me too.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you moved 20 plus times, but you lived away from home and you learned to adapt to new environments. That had to have been great for any mission president to know their missionary had that kind of experience coming in because change is something that they get used to. So you now arrive on the mission, you go through your training, and then something started happening within your body. Could you kind of explain how that went?
Yeah, so I was called to the Arizona Gilbert mission, English speaking, and, I got out there, I was in training. I had the best companions, President. I had the most amazing companions on my mission. I love them all. I'm very grateful for all of them. My trainer was awesome. She trained me out of training, so great. So one day, I think it was a P day, my parents called me with some pretty unfortunate news. And I think due to the stressful nature of the news, my body just kind of couldn't handle it. I was already stressed out. This was in training. I was already stressed out being on the mission. It was something new, even though I've moved a bunch of times. The mission is new, right? So many new experiences. And so I just kind of started feeling sick. Everything I was eating was making my body sick. My stomach was always hurting. And I feel the only things that were helping were sleep and eating chicken noodle soup. So really, really basic foods. And so I was pretty sick, but it wasn't severe until about my fifth transfer. So I kind of just dealt with it during training. I had, let's see, how many companions did I have? I had a companion in the MTC, Missionary Training Center. My trainer,
And did you have your trainer for 2 transfers or 1 transfer?
I had my trainer for 2 transfers and then out of training. And then I served in a YSA area and then my last companion. So I had 5 companions in Arizona.
So that was 6
Yeah.
transfers, is that right? Or almost 7 because you're
6,
with
I
1,
think.
2. Okay, 6.
Yeah, I think six
9
transfers.
months, half your mission.
Yep, half my mission.
Okay.
So I would say by the time I got to like my probably fourth companion, I was feeling really sick. Like everything was making my stomach hurt. I was kind of trying to eat the same things every day that I kind of knew wouldn't make it hurt. But when we were fed by other people, I would just get so sick. And so at that point, uh, got into my last transfer in the field. And I was so blessed to have my companion. She was I think a CNA or an RNA, I can't remember, but she like was taking care of me that transfer. I was so blessed to have her because I was so sick. We had to go to the doctors and stuff. Like I told my mission president, I was like, I have been sick and I do not feel good and everything's hurting my stomach. And he said, okay, let's get you into the doctors. He was so awesome, President Hansbrow. So went to the doctors, went to the gastroenterologist. They were like, I don't know. You're just sick. And they tested me for a bunch of allergies. I was not allergic to anything. And they were like, is it a parasite? It wasn't a parasite. It wasn't a bacteria. Like they had no idea. And so I finally got to this point where I like called my president. I was like, I'm not going home. We're going to deal with this. We're going to figure it out. And he was like, okay, we'll see. He knew better than I did. But I was like so sick. I remember there was like a week when we also like got a cold or something. So I was sick with the cold and I was like sick with my stomach and I like couldn't even get out of bed for like a week. I was so sick. And I'm so grateful for my companion. She like was taking care of me, making sure I was eating all the fluids, everything. There were members that brought us like food and I was just so grateful. They were so kind. But I went to my mission president and gave me a blessing. And we kind of both realized like, yes, this is going to get better, but you need to go home to figure this out. I remember being like, so I was talking to my mom about this the other day. She goes, I remember you were so determined to get back into the field. And I was like, yeah, I was. I was really determined to get back into the field. I think mostly because I wanted to feel better and because I knew that's where I was called. But when I got to Hawaii, I started doing my assignments and I started meeting people and I realized that was where the Lord like needed me. So I was okay that I didn't get to go back.
Well, I mean, if we believe that God's omniscient, which I think we do, then,
Yep.
he knew that was going to happen. And so you've made this transition. Did you have to worry about any of the stereotypes or any of the biases or any of the stigmas that went along with transferring?
Not even a little bit. And I feel like the ward was great. So it was actually really interesting because the ward my family was in was okay. I actually probably have to back up. I left for my mission and my family still lived in Utah. And when I transferred to the service mission, they had moved back to Hawaii like a month prior, like barely before. So that was definitely God's timing because if they had moved back to Hawaii after I had gotten home, I would have had to move twice. And that would have been really hard. Anyway, so the ward they were in Hawaii was the ward we grew up in, the fourth ward. And the bishop was a really good family friend. And it just ended up being awesome because they all just like welcomed us back. And like my mom had a calling with the nursery and I got to help with the nursery. As a missionary, I wasn't allowed to hold any of the kids or be alone with them. But I was allowed to help in any way I could other than that. Like I helped with snack time and we did singing time in nursery. And it was awesome. Like I just got to be like welcome into the ward. And I was really grateful for that.
If I remember, you lived in a house with maybe like one bedroom or you were all cozy there together. How did that work out?
Yeah, so my aunt and uncle live in Haula, and they had a little apartment. So while we were remodeling our house, they let us stay there. And it was my parents and me and my twin brothers. So there were 5 of us in a 1 bed, 1 bath. And it was August. It was really hot. I think we were there for like 3 or 4 months until our house was ready. Then we moved, and then we moved wards too.
Well, there's any experience I've learned is when you tell people you live in Hawaii, they don't really care how hot it was. They just think, really? Like, is that seriously where you live? But it was hard. And that's another adaptation you had to make. So you live with your family, they're remodeling their home, and you started getting assignments after a week of not knowing what you're going to do. Did you ever think in that long week, maybe this is the Lord saying you're done and this is the end of your mission? What were you thinking?
It was a hard week.
It's a hard week.
I just remember that my mom and I went to the beach and I brought my Book of Mormon because I wasn't sure if I was allowed to go in the water. So I was like reading on the beach. I was like, is this allowed? It was allowed, yes. But I had to bring a family member. But it just was pretty funny. Yeah, no. So I ended up meeting up with the service mission leaders. I think at the time I was serving, there were like maybe 10 service missionaries in all of Hawaii, all the islands. So we had one on another island and the rest were on Oahu, I think. So that was kind of fun. So I met with them and they just showed us all the service opportunities. They were like, you can do the temple, you can do PCC grounds and nursery and farm. You could do food pantry. And they kind of just gave me a bunch of options. And they were like, and if you find any other service opportunities, that would be awesome. We can just throw those in your schedule. So they kind of just showed me what the other service missionaries were doing. And we really, really enjoyed being able to serve together with other missionaries. So we tried to overlap our schedules as much as we could, which was so fun. So what ended up happening was on Monday mornings, we had a meeting as a service mission. We did it through Zoom because we all live like an hour apart from each other. Then on Tuesdays, I got to serve in the Family Search Center, which is like doing family history on the temple grounds in Lady, which was like so awesome. There were so many wonderful missionaries there, especially senior missionaries, and they taught me so much. Let's see. And then on Wednesdays, a lot of us got to serve together at the Polynesian Cultural Center on like the grounds, the farm, the nursery. Honestly, we picked a lot of weeds, but we had fun doing it. And I loved the farm. And we also had some senior missionaries there, and I'm still really good friends with them. Like they live in
Great.
Utah, and I still see them. They were so good to us. They always brought us like treats and stuff. And then on Thursdays, I served. So this one was kind of interesting. I was able to get approved to serve in a special education, like elementary school class. So I was able to add that to my schedule for like a couple hours every week. And that was really fun. I think it was on Thursdays. And then in the afternoon on Thursdays, I served in the temple laundry. That was my favorite one. And then on Fridays, we all got together at a food pantry in Kalihi in Honolulu. It was so fun. So we did food pantry on Fridays.
You know, the word that I counted, the number of times you said fun, was quite a number, actually. And it's interesting because you were pulling weeds and
Yeah.
you were having fun. You're working at a farm, you're having fun. You're in the temple folding laundry, you're having fun. You're
Yeah.
traveling all over across the island, you're having fun. Chloe, I think there's a common denominator in here, and it has to do with you choosing to have fun and taking every opportunity to serve with other people, whether they're fellow missionaries, whether they were guests, whether they were other senior missionaries. Everyone around you, you found a way to find joy and to have fun. And I admire that about you. I know every interaction you and I had, you were the most positive individual and you took everything in stride. If it was hard, that's okay. That was a fun learning opportunity. So I
Oh,
applaud you for that.
I forgot. I also helped at the call center a little bit. Like every once in a while,
Yeah.
I would help there. What was that one called again?
The online
The
teaching
teaching
center. Yeah.
online teaching center with the prosody missionaries. And then the other two things I did every week were I went to the temple every week, about 3 times a week. Because I had quite a bit of free time, I just went to the temple like 3 times a week. So that was awesome. And then the other thing I did was I became friends with a lady in Howla Fourth Ward. Her name is Judy. And I saw her every week and we played Roomy Cube together every week. And I'm still friends with her and I still try to call her. She's the coolest lady ever. She's in her 80s and we're just like besties. So those are my other 2 things I did on my mission.
I love that. So you had a lot of fun, but you only did one thing that was awesome, and that was go to the temple several times a week. I think that's
Eh,
fantastic.
It was all pretty awesome.
Well, you're in Hawaii. How could it not be? That's what
Yeah,
everyone's thinking.
exactly.
Okay, so let's fast forward now, and you conclude your mission. And I ask most of my guests, so do you remember? Of course you do, but you remember those first few days or weeks after you took the tag off? What did that feel like? What was that transition like from one chapter to the next chapter?
I feel like I went to the temple on my last day. I can't remember, but I feel like I went at least in the last week, if not on the last day. And then my family all went to the stake center with, President Nawahine.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, so President Nawahine released me and we were like all in the room. And I just remember he asked like my parents and everybody to talk about my mission and stuff. So it was kind of fun to see like their perspectives and just kind of what they thought about it. And then he released me. And then after we went to the McDonald's in La'ie, but I couldn't eat McDonald's because of my stomach, But my family was starving. So we just like went. And I remember being so sad at the McDonald's. Like, I'm so sad. What am I going to do? And then I got home and I put on my headphones and I listened to the music I'd been wanting to listen to for 18 months. And I was like, okay, I'm fine. Like, it's just time for the next chapter. Then the next day I was fine. And I started working like really soon after that. And I think that really helped the transition.
Well, I do talk to a lot of missionaries, and it is in some ways nice that you had that bridge of a
Yeah.
service mission, because it enabled you to be home and to transition through some of those changes you have to go through if you live in Cambodia, and you just come straight home. There's a lot to adapt and adjust to, and people do struggle. So now you're home from your mission, and people ask you the question, so Chloe, how was your mission? What's the elevator answer to that one?
Hard but good.
Hard but good. Okay, that's a
Hard
good
but
answer.
good. Yeah.
It is hard, isn't it? I mean, we all know that, right? Whether in Hawaii or anywhere else, missions are hard. You earn your stripes, so to speak. And so you do have to trust a lot in the Lord. And
Oh, yeah.
without Him, without the guidance, without knowing your purpose in all that you're doing, it would be excruciatingly hard. So you're off your mission, and now you're studying public health. Tell us about that. Was there any influence of your mission or your time spent in the schools you taught in? That look like?
Yeah, so when I was a freshman in high school, I got to be peer tutor in a special ed seminary class. So I was a ninth grader. And because of that class, I decided I wanted to be a special ed teacher. So since the time I was like 14, I just was like, I'm going to be a special ed teacher. This is what I'm going to do.
Love it.
And so that's why I wanted to serve in that classroom. I just like love it. I had the best time. And I feel like, so that freshman year was the year I really figured out that the Book of Mormon was true. And I figured out just how much God loves his children. Like, it just was such a good year for me. And so I was like, yep, this is what I'm going to do. So I got back to BYU and I had that as like my planned major, special education. And I had already taken all the prereqs. And so let's see. So I did it my freshman year at BYU before my mission. And then I did a year after my mission. So I'm in my junior year right now. And the summer after my sophomore year, I started working as a caregiver for this individual with disabilities who's also deaf because I know sign language. And I loved it. It was awesome. But this individual, their funding ran out. And so I was really kind of bummed out. And we ended up being at a park just one day and we met another individual adult with disabilities and caregivers. And I told them, I was like, oh, I'm so bummed. I'm like, not going to be able to work with him anymore. And they were like, just come work with us. And so I was like, okay. And I got a job working with them, and being able to work with these different individuals changed my life.
Wow.
I love it so much. I still work with them. It's called Timpanogos Self-Reliance, and we're kind of based in Alpine, Utah. But I get to work with kids and teenagers and young adults with disabilities of all different variations. Some individuals are verbal, some are not. Some love to play basketball all day. Some love to swim. Some love to draw. It's just so much fun. So I get to work with these individuals. And as I was working there this summer, I was driving home after my second day, my first or second day. And the spirit hit me so hard. It was like, this is what you have to do with your life. You have to do this. And I was like, what about the plan I've literally had for 10 years or whatever it's been? It's like, nah, it's going to be fine. So I texted my boss and I was like, hey, I want to do what you do when I grow up. And she was like, cool, great, you can keep working with us. And I was just going to continue with the special education major until I was looking at the classes and I realized these are awesome, but they're very geared towards public school, special ed classroom. That's exactly what they're geared for. And I was like, I'm not going to be a teacher. I don't want to do student teaching if I'm not going to be a teacher. So I started researching and looking at all the different majors, and I found public health, and I decided that one would be good. The major is called public health with an emphasis in health promotion. And I just was like, yep, this is for me. So I started taking classes this semester actually. And I'm hoping to keep serving individuals with disabilities kind of outside of the school system, especially adults, because there needs to be more service and care for them. There isn't a ton. So that's kind of my goal.
Well, I can't think of anybody better than to serve that population than you, Chloe. You are gifted and you have talent for that. So just a couple more questions, and this is more broad and general. What advice would you give to missionaries who are struggling perhaps with their health, fear of going home early from their mission, the whole transition to a service mission? What advice would you give to them with all the learnings that you've accrued over that time?
I think having a good support system is really helpful if you can get one. My parents were invaluable to me. I was able to talk to my mom whenever I was struggling, and she was able to help me work through it. So I think a support system is super helpful, especially when it's you don't know what's wrong. I didn't actually get diagnosed with anything until I had been in Hawaii for probably 4 or 6 months. So when you're stuck in that situation where you don't know what's wrong and you don't know how to fix it, it's really, really hard. Like, it's really hard, especially if you feel alone. Like, I didn't have any friends in Hawaii. I hadn't lived there since I was 11. So it was just my family and my friend Judy. But I think if you have a good support system, like if you can rely on your mission leaders or if you have a companion, like I had a service mission companion, we would do companion studies together. She was awesome. She also had some health problems, so we understood each other. I feel like having that support system is huge. I also feel like, so one of the really, I think, awesome things about my mission was that I had a couple assignments a week that were about an hour away. As a service missionary, you're allowed to drive alone. So I would spend that hour drive to Kalihi, go to the food pantry, and sometimes I would listen to Christian music, but sometimes I would turn it all off and I would just talk to God for the entire hour. And I feel like just taking that time to just tell him exactly how I was feeling, even if it was terrible, even if I'm like, I'm having the worst day ever, Heavenly Father. He was listening every single time. And I feel like that really strengthened my testimony that he loves me and that it was going to be okay. So I really feel like prayer is a game changer.
Well, I mean, the type of answers you get are pretty clear. Like, you are going to go on a mission now. You're going to do this other thing. And you know what? That's a credit to you. You understand that language. You appreciate when God speaks to you and you follow, which is another credit to you as well. So the last question I have for you is, what advice would you offer to return missionaries as they're navigating their next chapters of their lives?
Enjoy it. I think a lot of times we dwell on the past parts of our lives, but like I was telling you earlier, I've moved like a million times, but if I spent my whole life dwelling on somewhere I lived before, I couldn't enjoy the present. So I feel like, yes, our missions are awesome and they're so important for us to experience and to learn from, but we can't just like live forever in the past. We have to keep moving forward. So like keep developing friendships, keep trying to do good, even if you're not a missionary anymore. Like you can still do good things, you're just not knocking doors. I mean, I guess you could. I guess you could technically walk around and knock doors, but I don't know. Just keep trying to find good things.
That is great advice. Enjoy it, love life, find happiness, choose happiness, and find great awesomeness by being in the temple. Chloe, you've taught us well. We appreciate you. We love you. We wish you the best in this next chapter of your life. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks, President.
We hope you enjoyed today's program. It is our sincere hope that you gain insights from these lived experiences of disciples of Jesus Christ as you navigate your next chapters in life. We look forward to having you join us each week for the unfolding chapters of our guest. Remember to follow us on Instagram at rmnextchapters. Also, you can visit us on our website at rmnextchapters.com, where you can listen to each podcast or link to your favorite podcasting platform. As always, if you have any thoughts or feedback, we'd love to hear it. Please send it to rmnextchapters@gmail.com. See you soon.